kemp, in the grease, raw fleece. So those are just some of the terms that you might have heard as a new hand spinner, and maybe you're not 100% sure what they mean. In the first part of this video, I've got 11 terms that we commonly use around fleece that maybe you haven't heard before, or maybe you've heard them but you weren't quite sure what they meant. If you're new here, my name is Becca and I'm a hand spinner, knitter and newbie weaver, and you're very welcome to my sunny back garden here in West Wales. So number one on the list is raw fleece. So what do we mean by raw fleece? Basically, it's what comes off the sheep after shearing. It hasn't been washed, it hasn't been processed in any way, it's just raw. Number two is in the grease, or a greasy fleece, meaning that it's not had the lanolin removed. It's very similar to raw fleece, but quite often what people will talk about is, rather than a whole raw fleece, maybe they've got 200 grams of Lincoln Longwool in the grease. It means they haven't got a whole fleece, they've just got a certain amount of greasy fleece. Number three is lanolin, which is the natural sheep grease that keeps the sheep waterproof so it can live outside all year round. And it's the stuff that we remove when we wash the fleece or scour the fleece before we spin. You can spin in the grease. Not a fan, but it's something maybe you should try if you are a new hand spinner and decide whether it's something that you want to do. The lanolin will really soften your hands. Be careful if you are allergic, probably something you don't want to do, but generally if you're not allergic, it's actually quite a good thing. If you've got working hands, then a bit of raw fleece, playing with a bit of raw fleece will really help your working hands not be quite so dry. So the next thing we're going to talk about is second cuts. And sometimes you'll hear people say, I don't want to use that if it's got lots of second cuts, meaning that the shearer has gone over the same area twice. So you've got the long bit of fleece, and then he's gone over the same area, or she has gone over the same area, and you've got a little stubby bits of fleece that are not great for spinning, and they sort of can pill up. So you don't want a fleece that has second cuts. Next on our list, VM, or vegetable matter, or vegetative matter, and that's everything from grass seed to hay, straw, half a hedge, bit of twig, the things that sheep get caught in their fleeces as they're going about their sheepy business. Sorry, every dog in the neighbourhood's decided to bark right now. They've been completely quiet for probably the last, I don't know, 3 hours, and because I want to record this, they're barking. So the next one on the list is suint, which is basically dried sweat of the sheep, and it's very useful stuff, which brings us on to our next one, which is a suint fermentation bucket or tank, or whatever you want to use, bath. I'm using a bucket. And basically you put your raw fleece into a bucket of rainwater, leave it for 2 weeks, maybe 3 weeks, depending on how warm it is. And that suint, that kind of dried salty sweat, converts into a natural soap which will clean your fleece naturally. So I have started filming this process, and if you are watching this video sort of a few weeks after it was released, then there might well be the next video up on the channel, which will be all about cleaning the fleece with a suint fermentation method. So the next thing I'm going to talk about is how we might describe the fleece. So crimp. What does crimp mean? Basically, it's the curliness of the fleece, and you get everything from no crimp or virtually no crimp to sort of curly locks that you might get on a Teesdale or a Wensleydale. Staple length, and that's fairly straightforward, and it's how long is the individual fibre, and you can get really short staple lengths to really long sort of Longwools, which is what I'm dealing with at the moment, and they can be sort of 15-20 centimetres long quite easily. So for the next part of the video, by the magic of editing, we shall go and have a look at this, which is Lincolnshire Longwool, and have a look at it in its raw state. So I've done the thing that I tell people never to do. I have bought last year's clip. People are shearing at the moment, so if you're watching this in real time, There is this year's clip available, but this was on special offer and I sort of couldn't resist it really. So let's have a little look and see what I've got. So there we go. Lincolnshire Longwool. And I'm hoping that I'm going to be able to spread this out so you can actually have a look at the different parts of the fleece. And my goodness, yes, in the grease. And the reason I say always buy the current year's clip is because the lanolin gets quite hard the older it gets. And this is, yeah, this is a bit hard. But I think we'll be able to solve that. And it's nice and warm at the moment, so that is going to help. Right, let's have a little look at this. I think I might put gloves on, a bit stinky. Let's just see how this looks. So, bit of the so what you want to try and do is sort of spread it out the way it came off the sheep so you can see where the tail is and where the head is. I think you've got, that looks like that could be the tail. And up here. Not necessarily, actually. Well, it's got a bit jumbled about, but and it's quite pommy. But this stuff here, this is going on the garden. Some of it I think is savable, but this stuff, no. Some of it's going on the garden. There isn't a huge amount of VM actually. There's a bit of straw that you can get. When you get bits of hay, that's when it's really annoying, and grass seed. But a bit of straw is quite easy to pick out. So I think I feel a bit of a time lapse coming on. I'm just going to go through this and I'm going to pick out all the bits of straw. Has been skirted. And yeah, cue the time lapse. So that's what's going in the compost. So it's really not a huge amount. I mean, there might be some stuff that actually, once I get started with washing it, is rejects, but yeah, that's fine. And it's great for the garden and for lining hanging baskets. I'm going to do a fermentation, so a swint fermentation tank with some of it. I'm going to do my standard, what I always do with wool, kind of wash it, then scour it, and then I'm going to pull out some locks and actually do that in a slightly different method. But that's probably going to be several videos. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a section of it to ferment and then pull out what is going to be locks and what's going to be just regular, kind of as you like it. Now, when I was taught to process raw fleece, I was taught by a lady who kept Lincolnshire Longwools, and she didn't pull out locks. She just used it kind of and span it, and she was a production spinner, and she would basically put the whole raw fleece into a great big washing boiler, pour on the cheapest detergent you've ever seen in your life, and just bring it up to scouring point and just let it sit there for 8 hours. I mean, ages, really long time. But she was doing fleece after fleece after fleece, so she was not precious about it. She kind of had about 30-40 fleeces to process at once, so she had a production line going. I'm not sure how this is going to go because it is, as I say, it's an older fleece, so the lanolin is really sticky, and so it's probably going to take quite a bit of scouring. Anyway, let's get on with the experiment. So for your fermentation, your suet fermentation, you need a dark bucket of some description. And yes, I know that's a bit muddy, but it really won't matter. And the stuff that is really sticky with lanolin is what I'm going to put in here and see how it works. The stuff I'm going to do in the regular Burco boiler is going on one side, and then things that I think I'm going to pull out as locks I'm going to keep separate. So welcome back, and I hope you found that bit useful. And I'm just going to go over the different parts of the fleece. I have a little illustration here for you just to help you see where the different parts of the fleece are. So the first bit, number one, is the head, which is sort of all around the neck. This can be very fine wool, but it can also be quite dirty because the sheep is kind of rubbing its head and its neck. Then the next bit down we call the shoulders, sometimes known as the diamond, and this has got very good quality fleece on it. If you are dealing with something like a Shetland, then this is the part of the fleece that Shetland shawls were traditionally made of. And then sort of a little bit further down we've got the extra diamond, which is the absolute premium wool, really highly prized. Then we go down to the back, and this is still good fibre, maybe slightly coarser than the diamond, but really good quality. So then we have the belly, coarse, shorter fibres, quite often a lot of VM in it, can be quite dirty, and so probably not what we want to spin for our premium projects. This is maybe something that we would use for maybe felting if it was okay, but really you'd have to assess each fleece on its own merits, and this might be a bit of the fleece that you don't want to use. So our last bit is the breech, and these can be really coarse and hairy. It's sort of the back of the legs, and sort of it can be around the tail area, can be a bit daggy, so kind of bits of poop in it. And then of course the last bit we've got the tail, which definitely can be quite poopy, and you would hope that whoever has sheared them and sorted the fleece when you buy it has actually removed that bit during skirting. So that brings us on to some other terms, and one of the things I said there was skirting. So what do we mean by skirting? Basically, we are removing any of the bits of the fleece that we don't really want. So the bits that are a bit pooey and a bit kempy and a bit coarse and stuff that we just don't want to spin with. Now the other word I might have, so there's another word in there, kemp. What is kemp? They are hairy, quite short, hollow fibres, and they are quite different from the nice, fine, fluffy wool that you want to spin with. And if you've got something like a Welsh mountain sheep, they have a lot of kemp, and it can be sort of itchy and hairy. However, they are very hard wearing, and so although we might not want kemp for a really beautiful fine piece of knit that we're going to wear next to the skin, if you're weaving a rug, then maybe some kemp is going to be quite good for a particularly hard wearing carpet. So my final term is shearling, and that is the fleece from the first shearing of a lamb, a 1-year-old sheep, depending on when they were born and when they were sheared. But it is a young sheep, it's their first time they've been shorn, and so it can be quite short, as in a staple length can be quite short, but they can also be very fine. So I hope you found that helpful. If you've got any questions, please pop them in the comments below. There are lots of very experienced hand spinners in the community who will always jump on and answer a question. I am not the world authority on sheep and fleece. Okay, I've been spinning for quite a long time, but that doesn't mean that I know everything. So I'm always happy for other people to jump in and answer questions, give their opinions. It's a lovely community here, so please do feel free to put your comment below. I also write a weekly newsletter, and that is definitely aimed at the newer hand spinners, and I always try and include some helpful tips maybe some things that I've covered in the video that I've just recorded. So I'm going to just drop in the illustration that I showed in the video. I'm going to drop that in as a PDF so you get that with this week's newsletter, and you can sign up for that in the description below. So there's only one thing left for me to say. Until next time, may your needles be swift and your yarns be soft.